Yo, this is Ali Shrugs, and you're watching Underworld Voices.
I wish that I would have the time to make it right again, but I did not.
So what was your first introduction into music in general, and what made you want to take the step and start creating yourself?
Yeah, so my older brothers who immigrated from Mexico to Oregon, they started like a death metal band, and I didn't see them for the longest until I got to America. And then they found me, came to me, and they brought me a guitar, and that was like my first introduction to like doing things myself, and just playing a guitar, just kind of like being inspired by that, you know what I mean? And that's where it all started. I was like 9, 10, something like that. They was already outside. They're like 10 years older than me and shit. They was already in Oregon like doing a death metal band. So they were like my first inspiration. They're the reason why like black is my favorite color, or like outsiders are my favorite humans.
It's kind of a continuation of that. What drew you to the particular sound you're now creating?
So at first it was I was doing graffiti, and then when I got arrested and on probation and went to jail, and then I got a probation officer, I like had to chill. So I started putting my art into books. And then when I started putting my art into books, I started doing poetry. And then from poetry, I started to like freestyle out loud. And then when I started to freestyle, I started to like rap and like started putting this shit on instrumentals. And then gradually it grew into just experimenting with other shit, you know what I mean? Like, and then I found dark wave post-punk or punk, etc., whatever. My roots in East LA is just punk and gigs and shit like that, surrounded by like gang members and punks and just, you know, a bunch of fucked up people. So it gradually grew into starting to doing post-punk, and that's where I found like home, sanctuary with music.
So it's kind of touched on this a second ago, but what about where you grew up and who you grew up around influenced you as an artist?
Yeah, so I grew up in East LA on top of a liquor store next to a bar. And when my mom would leave to sell tamales, I would leave the crib because she was gone for so long, so I would ride the neighborhood. And then I just started to see what my environment was, and that shit just became a part of me, you know what I mean? Just my whole neighborhood was just like gang affiliated and punks and skaters, and I was just like in awe by it, and like, you know, I allowed it to just become a part of me.
Sure. You have a very particular like fashion sense and visual style. Where did this come from, and how did it evolve over time?
So when I was a kid, I grew up poor. And whenever I saw something in the world that I wanted, I had to make it or do it myself. So the first time that I ever started to kind of like create individuality through my clothing was I watched this foundation video, and this skater called Corey Duffel like inspired me so much. He had skin tight pants, and I was just like, oh my God, I love the way he dresses. Like, it's so hard. So my mom bought me a bunch of school clothes right before school started. And when she went to sleep, I cut all my clothes up and made it skin tight. And that morning, she beat my ass, but she let me wear it. And like, that was what kind of introduced me into like being, I guess, alternative, you know, for lack of better words.
Sure. How did you get involved with Death Proof?
So 37 Hands is a platform that I created in order to throw shows, because when I was like a small artist at the time, I was like, if I don't get booked, I'm gonna book myself. So I threw a show, and I booked Nano Face, me, myself, Meaty, Axel Bloody Axel, just a bunch of like dope ass artists. And this girl Maria came to the show with my boy Koa. Well, at the time I didn't know him. And then she saw what I was doing and spoke to me outside, and she's like, yo, I fuck with what you're doing. I want to introduce you to some people. And I was like, word, bet. And then later on that week, I met Miyagi, and I met some people from Death Proof, and shit, the rest is history. We started going from there.
So what's your favorite memory, one of your favorite memories of being on the road and traveling to show to show?
Yeah. Oh my God, bro. It's a love and hate thing with traveling, but it's just like when you come home and it's in the rear view, it's all beautiful. But the first time that I went on tour, because the NASCAR, he brought me on, I got to experience the country, you know what I mean? And like, as an illegal immigrant, I was like afraid to jump on the road or on a train or on a plane. But once I got on the road and I was in a tour bus and I was just sitting there waiting to go from one venue to the next, I fell in love with it. I fell in love with it. I fell in love with how active it was, like how quick moving it was. It just it put a lot of fire in me. You know what I mean? And just being on the road and going from gas station to gas station in Texas to Oregon to New Orleans to New York, and just seeing the world from a brand new perspective, it opened me up to kind of like accepting it more. You know what I mean? So that's for sure. Like, it's a big part of me.
Sure, sure. What's the hardest part about traveling nonstop?
Floors. Floors hurt your hip.
Fair enough. Other than that, pretty much overall positive experience.
Yeah, hell yeah.
Yeah, so we're gonna shift gears a little bit. What are your views on spirituality in the world around us?
Dude, I'm not religious, but I am. I have a very personal connection with like my own higher being, and I just feel like I take from every religion and I make it a part of myself in order to find complete freedom and individuality. And like I've made it such a big part of myself. The only reason that I'm very, very spiritual is because I stare at the moon so much, and this is why I drop music every full moon, because it's the best time to release something. So for the last few years, I've been dropping music every full moon in a way to manifest, protect, and release.
What are your hopes for humanity and society in general? And are you optimistic about where we're going or no?
I'm not really optimistic, nor do I have hopes for it. I'm just kind of like going with the flow, because we're so, we have little control and power as to what's happening in society other than what you do with yourself. So I'm just starting right here, you know what I mean? So I'm just gonna spread love and individuality as much as I can, and if it catches on, hopefully everybody starts doing that too. But other than that, I'm accepting of this chaos that this world provides. I'm a part of it too.
Fair enough. And you touched upon being an immigrant. With what's going on now today, people in office, what are your views on that, and what are your fears and I guess hopes for change in that?
Yeah, so I stopped having fear for it a very long time ago when I put illegal on my neck, because for me, since I'm an illegal immigrant and everything I do is against the law, to me it means complete freedom. And for that reason, I have no fear, you know what I mean? I walk through TSA like I belong there, you know what I mean? Like, and that's just really what it is for me. I'm empowered by oppression.
I like that. So what do you want your legacy to be as a human being?
Legacy is a bit like, there's like a bit of pride to it, you know what I mean? And then once I had kids, I saw above that, and I was just like, as long as I could leave something for them while still being myself, like that's what I'm gonna do. And if people remember me, like that's beautiful. But at the end of the day, I'm just gonna radiate this energy that's inside me that I need to give out, you know what I mean? But other than that, legacy, it's like ego a little bit. But I'm not too worried about it, but hopefully, you know, I'm remembered by just being me.
You mentioned having a family, having kids. How do you balance that with pursuing your art and doing everything you're doing?
Yeah, so I didn't have a father, and when I saw what that did to me, I couldn't do that to my kids when I had them. So I made it a priority to be a father, you know what I mean? And at the same time, continuing to do what I started, you know, before they came about. I tried to like get a job or fucking, you know, figure these things out left and right, but it's just like whenever I tried to get a job, it was like, it made me depressed. It took me away from who Ricky was, who Oddly Shrugs was, and then comfortability hinders your growth. So I was just like, nah, like the only place that makes me happy is making music and being a father. So as long as I could give my kids everything that I am, other than just money, you know what I mean, I'm gonna do that. And so like, even in front of my kids, like I make music in front of them, I paint in front of them, I try to influence them in any way that I can without forcing it on them. But them and like my baby mama have made it easy to continue to like to do what I'm doing after a few years of struggling with like accepting that this is what I'm gonna be.
For sure.
But it's a beautiful thing. I love it, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Would you like to see them follow your footsteps in pursuing art and music, or doing their own thing, or what are your views on that?
Well, based off of the philosophies and moral code that I've showed them, what I expect out of them is to see the doors that I've showed them, and whichever one they choose to walk through, like that's on them, as long as it makes them happy. As long as they're not being forced by some other energy in order to like do something that is not them, then I'm cool with it. But if it's what they want to do, it's cool with me. You know what I mean? I'm gonna respect it, and I'm gonna just support it 100%.
Fire, fire. So what advice or pieces of wisdom you could say would you give someone who's just starting out with music, or maybe they're kind of self-conscious about putting themselves out there? What would you say to that person who's just starting out and maybe hasn't taken those first steps yet?
Yeah. So take in the inspiration that you find in the world. That's perfectly fine. But don't go into the studio trying to fulfill like an image that you saw in the world that you want to recreate. Like, don't imitate something, innovate out of it. Take what it makes you feel and then recreate something, in order to find yourself. The only way to put something in the world that has never been there before is through true individuality. You know what I mean? That's the only way to put something that has never been there before, and that's my approach. You know what I mean? That's why I love freestyling. That's why when I get in the studio, it's all instinct. It's all that very first emotion that I feel. Don't try to do something that someone else has done, because that's not you. It's not who you are. You came into this world alone, you're gonna die alone, So it's just, individuality comes from right here.
Absolutely. All right, so lastly, tell us about any projects you got coming up, shows, events, anything you want people to know about.
Yeah, okay, so I just dropped my album, Mother, and it took me years to reconstruct, destroy, and recreate. I made it with a bunch of different producers, and I have 3 versions of this album that I didn't put out, and then I finally mastered it to something that I was super comfortable with and proud of. And when I did that, it was just like, oh my God, weight off of my shoulder. I did that, and now I just got, on top of that, I got hundreds of singles, hundreds of projects, features with so many homies and shit. Now I feel free to unload all of that. So all that shit's gonna be coming out in the future soon, while I'm just traveling and doing as much as I can. But you're gonna see all of it, you know what I mean? It's all coming soon.
Anyway, that's it. Appreciate you, bro.
Yeah, hell yeah. Thank you for having me.
Definitely.
Underground Voices.